Welcome everyone to another Express Entry Top 6 tip. And this one is all about police clearances. Yes, you are guilty until proven innocent. Why? Stay tuned. All right, everybody, welcome back. And the reason that I say guilty until proven innocent is for the simple reason that, like most of the documents that you're submitting, if you don't get it 100% perfectly correct, your application will get rejected. And it doesn't matter what document it is, but police clearances are particularly dangerous because if it comes in a language that's different than English or French, it has to be translated. And in a previous video, I explained all of the parameters around translations, including a translator being able to include a certified true copy. But my friends, that is not the case for police clearance certificates because you need to provide a scanned copy of the original in color. Where does it say that? Where does it say you can get away where you actually have to provide a police clearance in color? This is what I want to show you. And if you don't do it, you are guilty. In other words, your application is rejected. So if we go here to the completeness check website, you can see here as we scroll through this and we read all of these instructions here, it talks about a whole bunch of things that I'll cover in just a second. But the reality is, as we're going through here, you can see it tells you all the parameters about where you need it, when you need it, all these kinds of things. And you can see it says right here, embedded way down at the bottom, hidden in almost imperceptible place, police certificates need to be a scan of the original certificates in color. Certified true copies and unauthorized copies are unacceptable and will result in your application being rejected as incomplete. So right off the bat, remember that any police clearance certificate that you provide needs to be in color. And I know this sounds so goofy. Some countries are black and white, like the US. Some countries have them in color, and if you make a mistake, it can result in your application getting rejected. How do I know that? Because it happened to me in the early days of Express Entry. A client had submitted a whole bunch of police clearance certificates to our office, all bundled together in one document. They're all in color. There was a German police clearance certificate. I think there was a US. There was a bunch of them. Well, as you know from the document checklist in Express Entry, you are to upload each of those police clearance certificates in their own separate space. So my assistant at the time, she printed them all off, rescanned them in. Instead of breaking them apart, she didn't understand kind of how Adobe worked, but she printed them off, then rescanned them back in as separate documents. And normally that would be just fine. And we went through, we submitted the application. I did not catch it. And within a month, we had it rejected because the German police clearance certificate, when my assistant printed it off, she printed it in black and white. And when we scanned it in, it was in black and white, and the application got rejected. That is the insanity of police clearance certificates, but that's not the only way, you guys. So if we flip back here, you will see that the government has a site that tells you exactly how to get a police certificate. You're always going to go here, always. And if you choose a country, let's go with India. I'm sure that is probably a vast number of the viewers here. We'll go with India. Then we find out how to apply. There's a couple critical aspects of this that you guys need to pay attention to. So if we look here, the one is name of the document you need. You absolutely need to make sure that this name matches exactly what is on the title in your police clearance certificate. If it doesn't, well, it may not be fatal. Maybe they've made a change. Maybe they haven't updated the actual instructions. You can see these instructions were last updated back in 2020, November 27th. And so it's possible that there may have been a change by the country in how they're issuing police clearance certificates, and you just weren't aware, and IRCC also hasn't updated it. So that's one thing that's really important. Then the next thing is sometimes you don't even need to provide it. So you can see you must provide, in this case, a police certificate when you apply for permanent residence in Canada. So you can see here, but let's take another country and let's go back here and experiment. Let's pull up maybe Mexico. Okay. So I'll pull up Mexico. See if I can get to it. There it is. Mexico. And then find out and how to apply. Then you can see here, once again, Constancia de Datos Registrales. That is the title that you should see on the police clearance certificate. And what does that mean? It is not in English. Okay. But here's the kicker. In some cases, it will say you don't need to provide a police certificate with your application. You know, they'll send you a letter, and then after you send your application, and then you can submit it. And then there will be other information. Now, while I'm on Mexico, I also want to point out to something else. So as you're scrolling down here, you'll see Mexico has its own instructions. Things are a little bit different, but there may be special considerations that you have to pay attention to. And each of the different countries had different instructions. And so let's go back to India, for instance, here. We'll go back to India, where police clearances are required up front. So when we click on here and then we scroll down, you can see here, it gives you instructions on how to apply. So there's actually 4 different possibilities for where you can get your police clearance certificates depending upon where you're at. And if you scroll down to special considerations here, in this case, you can see character certificates are not accepted. So you may go to one of these places, like maybe a local district police, and then they issue a character certificate alone that isn't the more comprehensive police clearance certificate, and then you end up getting your application rejected. Now, in my express entry course, I have a bunch of sample documents to help guide my clients who are taking the course. And so, but you have to remember that if you are not 100% in line with what immigration is asking, you are going to get your application rejected. It's as simple as that. And I'll just give you a quick sneak peek as to what we have, and I'll show you. I'll even pull up let's just go in here. I'll even pull up the actual course, and let's take a look and see what we have for Indian police clearance certificates. So I've got all these courses, and yes, you can find this all in the Canadian Immigration Institute. So I click into here, and then I go down to this massive module called Mastering Your Documents. As I scroll down, you'll see here's a whole lesson only on police clearance certificates. And over time, I have slowly started to build a database of countries and police clearance certificates that are all available for you. So let's just take a dive into, you can see there's 2 versions, India PCC and India Consulate. So if we take an Indian PCC and we open this up, should appear here. Yep. So you can see this one is in black and white, but it has these stamps that are in purple. And another critical thing that you need to understand, and you can see this one was issued back in 2020. You can see here that Government of India, Ministerial of External Affairs, Regional Passport Office, and you can see Police Clearance Certificate. Do you see that right there? If we flip back to those instructions I was showing you, let's see here, for India. Let's make sure I'm in the right place. Oh, sorry, right there. There we go. Okay, so now we know Police Clearance Certificate right here, and this is for India. That's what we're looking at. So you can see Police Clearance Certificate. I know I can look at this and at least I know, okay, this is probably the right document. And as you go through here, you'll see in some cases, there are different languages and there will be mirrored language. So for instance here, we've got regional police and then the local script, deputy passport officer, local script, okay? And even on the seal, it has both. So if you have a police clearance certificate, and probably another good thing is let's pull up Mexico and take a look at Mexico. I think, let's see, do I have Mexico? Oh, I haven't uploaded it. I know I have one, but we haven't uploaded it. Okay, so anyways, the reality is with this, you need to make sure that it matches exactly what's being asked for in here. And you can see here, some police certificates have limitations related to jurisdiction and time period having been searched. Such certificates will not be accepted. So if you get a police clearance certificate that says we're only searching this time period from, January the 1st of 2023 to January the 31st of 2023, that's not good enough. It needs to encompass all of your time that you're in the country since the age of 18. Some countries like Pakistan have very narrow restrictions in some cases with the jurisdiction when you're obtaining the police clearance certificate. And so it's not as broad, but it always is changing, constantly evolving. And so I want to address a couple other issues in here. You can see here, obviously there are different formats for the police clearance certificate depending on the issuing authority. In this case, they may look a little bit different. So let's jump back into here and then let's pull up one for the Indian consulate here. So we open this one up. It should give us a good example of it. There we go. Okay, so you can see in some cases they are very, very similar in how they look. You can see here, this one had a black and white stamp. you know, and if we compare these two, you can see this was in color. And let's see what else, if there's any other. Regional Passport Office, this one, and this one was the Consulate General of India in Toronto. So you can see they have variations in what they look like, but they still have the same police clearance certificate name. So be aware of that. These are things that can really trip people up and cause lots of problems and grief. Let's jump over and just touch on a couple little last minute things that people just don't understand. If your application does not require that you provide a police clearance certificate like we had for Mexico, I always take a printout, a screenshot of this, and I actually include it within my letter of explanation just out of an abundance of caution. Then in the section for that particular country, I provide an LOE at the front of this that basically says, please note, I am not required to provide a police clearance certificate up front, but I'm waiting for your letter that you've indicated. All right. So then when we go into here, you can see here, as we're scrolling down here, they give very specific instructions on where you need it. And I don't want to dive into too much other than saying it's back 10 years. And you can see here, this is one of the things that frustrates me. Express entry applications, you can see here, it says, our online system will ask for police certificates for you and your family members who are 18 years or older and every country that you've lived. Well, it doesn't actually ask for that. It's 10 years, or it's back 10 years is what it asks for. So even within the government's instructions, they can be conflicting. And if you scroll down here, this was updated back in 2021. So read the express entry requirements so that you know. But if there's ever any doubt as to whether or not you need it, just go ahead and get it. All right. And you can see any time period that is before 18 years or in Canada, you don't need to provide. And another point that I wanted to identify here, like I said, they must be in color once again. And the request letter, it tells you what to do. You can specifically include this language if you want, although it's just an example of what you do. I'm applying from a country that requires an official request letter from IRCC to get a police certificate. But you're going to say, and that's why I'm not providing a police certificate at this time. And then if you go down here, they give some sample scenarios, but this is what I want to identify. Okay. The date the certificate issued, it does not expire. Only under these circumstances. So if your country puts an expiry date on the police clearance certificates, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. What dictates is this. So it must be issued no more than 6 months before the date you submit your application and must not be expired if you are currently living in that country. So if you're currently in the country, when you submit the application, your police clearance certificate is only valid for 6 months. For any other country, in other words, if you're not living there, then it must be issued after the last time you stayed there for 6 months or more. And one of the questions lots of people ask is, well, what if I go back for a couple months? Or what if I go back for a short holiday? I've had lots of issues with IRCC over this. The head officials have said, oh, we don't worry too much about a week or 2 weeks if you go back. Don't trust them. If you go back after 6 months have passed from the issuance of that police clearance certificate, then under no circumstance do you submit your application using that old PCC. I always request a new one. Okay. So you can see some countries put expiry dates. You can ignore those and we'll accept it if it was issued after the last time you stayed for more than 6 months in a row. So basically what that means is if your police clearance certificate was issued 2 years ago and you have never returned back and it was issued after you left, then it doesn't expire. And you can see it is not for the country where you currently live. And it was issued after right here, the last time you stayed. And of course you were there for 6 months or more in a row. Okay. And remember, at any point in time, an officer can ask you to get whatever you want, including a Canadian police clearance certificate. They can have you update one if it's been too long. And so the last little piece I want to show you is that sometimes it just takes longer than 60 days to get that police clearance certificate and get it submitted. And maybe you don't have circumstances in place where you can get it in advance and you've got the ITA, it surprised you, and now you're rushing to get your PCC and you can't get it in time. Well, you can see here, if you can't meet the 60-day deadline, you got two options. You can decline your invitation to apply. Do you guys understand how serious it is? How serious they treat valid PCCs, to the point where you've got everything met, you've got your ITA, and then they come back and say, well, you know, if you don't have a perfect one, then we recommend option one is that you decline your ITA and wait for another one until you get your PCC. that is an awful decision. You may never get another ITA again. So if we scroll down here, then it gives option 2, but once again, it says very rare cases. In other words, you can submit it, this information they've asked for, which is basically proof that you've made attempts to get it, a confirmation receipt, a payment receipt, some proof, and then the officer will review it. And if they're not satisfied that you made your best efforts, this is crazy, this best effort stuff, your application may be rejected for being incomplete. So I can't tell you guys how many times I've had police clearance certificates, people who've come to me after they filed their own application, because I would never make that mistake, and they got it rejected because the police clearance certificate had expired because they had maybe got it 2 days before they left their country, or they had returned for a couple weeks or a month, and then IRCC said no, the police clearance was invalidated the moment you step back in because it was more than 6 months old. So there's a whole host of issues that can come up with these, and what you need to understand is that you truly are guilty until proven innocent. All right? Okay. Thanks, guys. I will be back on Wednesday. Those of you who put super chats in, this is not meant to be a live discussion, so I have kept track of you, and I will make sure that if you show up on Wednesday, I will make sure to give you answers to your questions Wednesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. All right. Thanks so much. Take care and stay safe.